housekeep um, housekeeping points. So as you've just heard, we are going to be recording this, and then this will be available on the YouTube channel either by the end of today or tomorrow. If you can keep all your microphones on mute, obviously while we're having the interview, and then towards the end we'll be taking any questions. There is a chat box available, so you can put all your questions in there, and as we get to the end we can go through those and pass those over to Darren to answer, hopefully. So I will leave it there and I will hand you over to Fran and Darren.
Thank you so much, Claire. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining us on Sunday afternoon. Now, I've got to say, if you've not had the pleasure of meeting or getting to know Darren, you're going to be in for an absolute treat. He is a much-loved face of Aston Martin and has been on the scene for years. Unfortunately, we've only got an hour here, including our questions, so we're going to have to zoom through it because this guy's got a lot to talk about. Even just chatting for a few minutes gets so exciting. So I think we should just jump straight into it. And Darren, let's go back to the beginning. Where did it start? How did you get into racing?
Well, firstly, hello to everyone who's joined us this afternoon. So thanks for coming along. It's funny because my mum and dad are moving house at the moment. So this week I've been down and collected a load of boxes that they've had in the loft of stuff that we did when I was younger, and it's been really nice to go back down memory lane, just clearing out all those boxes with my parents. But it started. Ultimately, I wanted to race motorbikes, but that wasn't on my mum's agenda. She wasn't so keen on me racing bikes. So where they lived in Camberley, there's a kart circuit not too far away, and I used to go up there and watch it on Sundays with some friends. We used to cycle up there and watch it, and eventually it was, I guess my parents sort of could see that I really wanted to do it, so they sort of gave me a target. If I could raise some money to buy a secondhand car, I think it was like, you can pick up a secondhand car for about 500 quid. So, yeah, they're not going to pay for it, but if I can find the money, then we could have a look at it. So I was probably maybe just turned 13, something like that, or I was maybe coming up to 13. So I spent the next year just bringing as many ways of trying to make some money as I possibly could from, as a 13-year-old, from washing cars on the estate to paper rounds to birthday money to whatever I could get. And it took about a year to get 500 quid together. And off we went to buy my first secondhand car. And as a family that had no idea about motor racing, we obviously bought a really bad secondhand car because we just didn't know what was good and what was bad. So this particular one, the photo that's just come up, wasn't a bad one. This is when I'd probably done maybe 2-3 years of karting by this stage, but the first one was horrendous and very uncompetitive, but it got us into the paddock. We had a chance to start to understand motor racing, and people could see that I was passionate about it, that we weren't really coming in from a affluent family at all, and people in the paddock were really helpful to us. So they sort of gave us secondhand parts, and we'd have old people's, old tires from people and stuff like that, but enough to keep going. And in reality, it wasn't like I wanted to be a racing driver, because I didn't know. I used to watch Formula One on the weekend, but I never really twigged to quite late how these guys got to Formula One. For me, karting was just like a way of going racing, and that was it. So yeah, it was more of a chance for me to do what I thought was going to be my career, which is be a race mechanic. That's my main goal at that age, was if I could get into Formula One as a mechanic, then that'd be amazing. So me tinkering around on a kart in the garage was just good experience. So we did, I don't know, me and my dad probably did maybe half a dozen, 8 races a year, club racing, for quite a few years. And then when the karting was going, it was all very low key. But then when I left school, I managed to get a job at a Honda dealership, but unfortunately that went into receivership after, I don't know, it must have been after about a year, because I'd just come out of school, 1 year of work, and then was out of work or about to be out of work. So I started to, it's all before the internet. So I started sending letters out to racing teams around the country, anything that I could find in the back of Autosport, Yellow Pages, anywhere, try and find some information. And I got a job interview in 91 with Jordan Grand Prix. It was their first year in Formula One. I think at the time there was like just over 40 employees there, and they were after a young lad in inspection to come up and help. So I can remember driving up to Silverstone with my parents. They dropped me off for the interview, and the old boy that was in charge of inspection, a guy called Gordon, lovely old man. He took me in, and I'm sure when I went in for the interview, he's like, "Oh Christ." I was expecting someone a bit older and probably a bit more experienced. But I went in there and he gave me a technical drawing, a part of the Formula One car. But thankfully, my father's background, he's a tool maker. So I'd been around machine workshops and milling machines and lathes since probably 8 years old. So I knew how to use a micrometer, a vernier, and I knew how to read a technical drawing. And so I measured this part, told him it wasn't correct. It wouldn't be to the drawing spec. And then got walked across at the time, Jordan Grand Prix isn't where Aston Martin base is now. It was across the road in one of the old units at Silverstone. Got walked across the yard to where Eddie Jordan's office was. He wasn't in, but the right-hand man of Eddie Jordan was a guy called Bosco Quinn. And I literally got given the job then. So at 17, moved up to Silverstone, and I was like, this is amazing. I'm already in Formula One. This is great. I'm set as a career, as hopefully work my way through Jordan Grand Prix, and I'll end up being a race mechanic at some point. But it was moving up to Silverstone and being in that environment of motorsport effectively 7 days a week. You know, I lived and breathed at Silverstone. And the people there, they just got behind me and they all clubbed together, and they sent me on a Jim Russell racing school at Donington Park. I did the week-long course, and that was it. That was the turning point for me. You know, I was going from club racing to trying to be a racing driver. I now understood what it was to sort of move up the ladder and how to get there. How to get there was another story, but at least I understood how, instead of where I was many years ago, where it's like I'm karting just for fun and it's like I'm going racing and I'm watching Formula One drivers. I could see now the sort of the ladder of, you know, where you could go and all the opportunities that were available. So it was that job interview and moving up to Silverstone that was the sort of first big turning point for me.
I mean, just in those few minutes telling stories of the first few years of your career, like I imagine there's so many stories we can pull out, and it's already a pretty mental journey. Like that happened. I'm sure, you know, in reality, it's not that easy. It was just sending a few letters, but it kind of sounds like it came together.
I got lucky, you know, as a 16-year-old kid who's done like nearly a year as a Honda apprentice, who could do an oil filter and changed it was a Honda garage that did cars, but also it did lawnmowers and generators. So, you know, I was a dab hand at changing a blade on a Honda lawnmower as well. So, you know, I just got really, really lucky, you know, if that dealership hadn't gone into receivership, I would have stayed thinking this is great. You know, I've got a job and I can work my way up. And, you know, the fact that they had a problem meant that I had to start looking for other opportunities. And that was when the sort of started writing the letters. And it's trying to remember what life was like before the internet, you know, how difficult it was to find out, you know, the address for a race team and who the boss was and all of that stuff. So, you know, it's just a different time, but it was that move up to Silverstone that really got me going. And, you know, having never had like money to go racing, we always had to go and find it through sponsorship and people wanting to be part of the journey. And it was, you know, that first round of trying to get the money to go and do the Jim Russell course and everyone paying for it gave me my first education of how to go and find money to go racing, you know, how to find sponsorship. But also at that Jim Russell school, I met 3 guys. I'm still in touch with all 3 of them now. So this is 1992, that week-long course. One of them was a city guy. Oh, they're all older than me by like 10 years. One was a banker basically in the city. One was he was trying to be a driver, but, you know, he came from a reasonable affluent family. And another guy was a printer. So those 3 guys, all older than me, they sort of liked what I was trying to do and they wanted to be part of it. So the banker in the city found me my first sponsorship deal, which was ING Lease, which, you know, they were a massive sponsor of Formula One for a period. So I got some money out of those guys. the guy in Birmingham, his son's now racing, and it's really nice to see, the sort of the theme carrying on, and that guy, and he's still very much part of the racing scene. They found me a bit of money as well, and then the printer did all my brochures, sponsorship proposals and everything else. So those three guys all got behind me, and we just went out and found money, and I managed to convince someone at Jordan Grand Prix, one of the designers, that if he lent me, I think it was $4,000, I'd buy a second-hand Formula First car, and I'd race it for whatever I could race it for, maybe half a season. And at the end of the year, I'll sell it, and I'll make him more money than his bank will when he gives in a savings account. So he did me a deal on $4,000. We went out, bought a second-hand Formula First, and I ran it from Jordan Grand Prix. So when the F1 card went off to the races, I used to roll my car into the workshop, and I used to prep my car during the week in the evenings. It's quite nice because there's a fabricating shop and a carbon shop, and I used to be able to do all the repairs on it. My dad would roll up on maybe a Thursday night, we'd fire it in a trailer, off we go, and it was lad and dad sleeping in the van, and we'd go and do Formula 4 first race as a lad and dad against some of the teams. And it was then I got picked up by one of the teams after doing a good job. And to be honest, that's the sort of the second turning point, was when I got my first free drive and noticed by a team, and it sort of snowballed from there. But I don't think I ever had grandeur that I was going to get to Formula 1. I was quite late starting relative. Karting was late. Formula First, I was probably a year or two older than some of the youngsters into it. But I thought I could make a career. But when you're self-financing it somehow through sponsorship and that, you don't really have the luxury of deciding what your route will be. You just have to beg, borrow, and steal, put the money together, and then hope to have something in place for the following year to go racing. And it just happened that lots of people wanted to be part of that journey. So I did the Formula First, I did a bit of Vauxhall Lotus, and then there was a team up in Norfolk, Redgrave Racing, and they took me under their wing, and I had 2 really good years with those guys in Formula Renault. And I guess the biggest turning point of my career was the second year of Formula Renault. I came second in the championship, and that put me through to the McLaren Autosport BRDC award. And at that moment, you're against the other top 6 British drivers in various championships in the UK. And we have a 2-day shootout at Silverstone, and that award's still going now. And it's 30 years in, and still producing Formula 1 drivers as well. So that was the big turning point. I won the award at the end of '96, and then March '97, I had my first F1 test with McLaren, and that was, I guess, that was the turning point of actually, I've just jumped out of Formula Renault end of '96, and now I'm testing a Formula 1 car as part of my prize. And I stayed with McLaren from from 97, when I had my first test, right up until 2005 as one of their test drivers. And again, really nice people there. Martin Whitmarsh, who's sort of the head of the whole team there at the time, and randomly now he's the head of what happens at Aston Martin Formula 1 as well. He sort of basically said, look, you've got the skills and everything else, but we're never going to be in a position to sort of offer you a chance in Formula 1 as a driver. But you do a good job, and you're a bit like Ron Sill in terms of you do exactly what's on the side of the can. You're reliable, you're safe hands, you're not trying to set lap records all the time, and we can use you. So I had a long sort of period with McLaren, and ultimately they gave me my sort of, actually randomly, it was the first time I got paid to drive a car, because I can remember doing my award drive in, I think, March of April '97, and then 2 or 3 months later, Indy Lyle, who was the test team manager for McLaren at the time, rang and said, we need you to come and do a shakedown test. I'm like, oh great, as a kid, yeah, brilliant. Where do you want me? And off I go. So I think we did it at Santa Pod, and off we went to Santa Pod, and at the end of the day, he goes, right, just send me an invoice. And I'm like, invoice? What am I sending you an invoice for? And he goes, well, obviously we're paying you to test you, it's professional, so we pay you. So I was like, I don't even know, what do you charge for a day's testing? So he told me what I should charge, which is more money than I was earning over a week to earn that sort of money back in the day, and that's what the day rate started on. And I could get used to this Formula One. So, and then I stayed with them for many years, and they introduced me to Mercedes. And then my first sort of real professional racing was with Mercedes in 2000 and 2001 with the DTM stuff. So that's sort of, I know, very short how I got from
10 years in 10 minutes.
bumbling around a kart track in near Blackbush and in Camberley, and then ended up as a professional race driver.
I think one of the things that's probably not just me that enjoys this about you is kind of, like you say, you do what you say on the tin, but you're so straightforward and honest with things, which probably played really well for you being self-funded and having to do all of that work, because you've just got this really great way of making things clear, asking for what you want, and kind of being honest and good with stuff. And that must have played very well in your whole career. I mean, what I'm saying is your personality as well as your skills has probably done you well.
I think it's a bit of both. There's plenty of really good drivers out there, like really, really good drivers. And I'm not saying I'm the best driver in the world, far from it. I'm good. I have my really good days where I'm like top of the sort of the timetables, but solid and reliable. Don't really make many mistakes. But there's loads of drivers who are more capable, probably quicker. But I've seen a lot fall down because they don't have the right attitude off the track. My feeling is I'm paid for everything that comes off the track, because the bit I want to do is drive the race cars. And there's loads of people out there that pay a lot to go and race cars. And to be paid to race cars is a real privilege, and everything that's around it, everything, all the bad days and the having to do the sponsor stuff or whatever, the media stuff, all of that. And I have to say, none of it's that bad. Even the worst part of the job, if you could say the worst part of the job, it's not actually that bad. So, but that's where I think my earnings come from. And then the bit on the track is the privilege of doing everything else.
That's the payoff.
Yeah, exactly. And I've enjoyed it from the beginning. And I think also when you start with nothing, I really feel people want to see an underdog do well. And I have to say, I've had so much help from people all the way through. Even now it happens. I've still got a nice portfolio of personal sponsors, and they're there because they want to be part of the journey. And my journey as a race driver is becoming, I can definitely see the end in sight, and it's lasted longer than I thought. I can remember when I was in my 30s thinking, Christ, if I can get to 40 as a pro, that'd be amazing. And then I'll worry about what my second, whatever, how am I going to pay the mortgage and everything else after that. And then as I was getting close to 40, I was like, Christ, I need to carry this on to 45. So I've been like pushing and pushing and pushing. And now, and I'm not that far away from turning 50. It's like, right, maybe I can get to 52. I'm not doing 5 years anymore. I'm only doing if I can get another 2 years out of this, I'll be really happy. So, it feels a bit Peter Pan. I'm doing something that I wanted to do as a kid, and I'm still doing it. And I've been really fortunate to be able to make it my living, and also fortunate to make it last as long as it has, really. And I'm super grateful for all the people that have been along on that journey, and some of them have been with me, like the 3 guys at Jim Russell, pretty much from the very beginning, and they're still part of that as well.
So before we get on to talking about kind of further down the career and what you've done since, let's rewind back to 2001 and kind of what happened from there. So we're going to do 10 years and 10 pretty magnificent years, but it carried on growing almost at the same rate, really.
Yeah, I mean, so I thought I'd hit the big time, getting a works drive with Mercedes, being paid by Mercedes. I was a McLaren test driver, and I was doing okay. But after 2 years of DTM, Mercedes were like, no, we don't want you anymore. So you go from feeling like the man to, oh, right, I'm back to square one. So 2002 was difficult. I didn't have anything. I ended up doing a oval championship in the UK, ASCAR, which was really good at the time, but it died out after a few years. But it was, again, I had something. I got a free drive. I had made a few quid from some personal sponsors, but it kept me out there and it kept my name sort of within the industry. And then I got picked up to do this was probably another turning point, doing FIA GTs with a team called Velox. So that was 2003. So that was my sort of first interaction in what do you call it? Not
Introduction.
Introduction, that's the word. Yeah, to sports car racing. And Velox had a connection with ProDrive, who were running the 550 Ferraris at the time, and so we were doing a separate championship with some 360 Ferraris. Velox paid for a few of us to go and race with these 550s with ProDrive, and that was my introduction to ProDrive, which ultimately I've been with for the last 22 years. So we did 2 years with the Ferrari 550s, then ProDrive effectively it created Aston Martin Racing, and that's how we sort of got going with the Aston brand. So it was my relationship with ProDrive that sort of got me into being with Aston Martin. And the thing with Aston Martin at the time, they didn't have any racing. You know, it was not really anything of a international level. So yeah, ProDrive, David Richards, Dr. Betts at Aston Martin, they were the guys that all sat around and worked out a strategy of how to bring Aston Martin back to sort of frontline motorsport, and created the iconic DBR9. So that just that 2002 was a reminder of how fickle the sport is, and how you can go from hero to zero pretty damn quickly. But I wasn't about to give up with my first sort of big challenge. It was like, okay, like regroup and get going again.
I mean, from there, that's kind of been your main part of career. And it's like when you're saying about the Honda dealership closing down, sometimes when something really bad happens, and it's awful at the time, but when something really bad happens, it can lead to something better. And obviously this wasn't a direct leading to, but had you stayed on that path, who knows where it would have gone. And
exactly,
being with Aston Martin has been, I mean, a pretty incredible journey, right?
Yeah, I believe firmly that if one door shuts, you'll go and find two that will open. If you just keep badgering everyone and making so it's like
if you knock on them, they'll open.
Yeah, you'll find something that are open, and there'll be a way of finding something different. It might not be what you were thinking, but you just don't know where these paths go. But I have to say, that chance with that Velox gave me to drive with ProDrive, that gave me the chance to go to Le Mans for the first time in 2003. That relationship with ProDrive, they had their own drivers at the time, and Velox were like, we were sort of dumped on ProDrive. And it was only in the second year in 2004 that one of the ProDrive work drivers couldn't do an event, and I ended up getting the call to go out and share a car with David Brabham in Miami, and we won that race. And that was my little in to being like seen as a ProDrive driver. And so when the Aston program started, it was okay, we're going to use Darren. The best thing is I'm local, this is as far, I'm 30 minutes away from ProDrive now, and this is as far away as I've been from ProDrive in the last 22 years. So, I'm very on the doorstep for them, and it does help. So, it's been a real privilege to be part of their journey, but even more so to be part of what Aston Martin have done in the last 20 years. To be a works driver for Aston Martin for any time is a privilege, but to be there for 20 years, it's certainly something I'd never expected. And to be honest, before this period that Aston's been back, as a younger driver, it wasn't even on the radar as a manufacturer, because they didn't do anything really that was sort of in the limelight that I would have picked up as a younger driver. It was all in the past. So it's just really nice that now they've got this whole sort of history, modern history that's been running for 20 years now of GT racing or prototype racing, and hopefully hypercar racing in the future as well. So it's been good to be part of that era, because I look back at the history of Aston, and they sort of had waves of success, and also waves of being lost in the motor racing world. So it's nice that in this 20 years we've had generally, I'd say 19 years of success, one little blip, but yeah, it's been really good to be part of that.
Well, let's focus on the successes rather than the blips. You've had some pretty massive successes with Aston Martin ProDrive, and you mentioned briefly Le Mans, and that is kind of a race. I think of you, I think of Le Mans. So let's talk about that and what happened there the first
Yes.
time.
So I chose this picture because it's the year that we won. We had a stellar sort of driver lineup. Thomas Enger there, Johnny Herbert, Peter Cox, Brabham, and Ricky Rydell. So me, Rydell, and Brabham were sharing the 009. But the photo was more about the team behind. You know, the car, the DBR9. This is our third year with the car, but it's the team of people behind from Aston Martin Racing, and it's it's probably a similar size now at ProDrive for running the cars. But these guys were incredible that year. They're incredible every year at Le Mans, to be fair. But this particular year, we spent the least amount of time in the pits during the race than any other car, not just in our class, but any other car. So the strategy from the engineers, the pit stops that the team sort of executed during the race were absolutely world class. And all of that contributed to us finally getting a win for the DBR9 at Le Mans. So this was 2007. The first year, 2005, 2006, I would say were less successful. In 5, it's the first time with the cars. I think it was probably the hottest Le Mans. Maybe they've had one hotter now since, but then it was like the hottest one on sort of record. And I'm just trying to say, I can't see on the photo if he's there, the technical director of the team, a guy called George Howard Chappell. Well, he's left ProDrive. He now works for Multimatic, and we're still very much friends. But he was all about car performance, not about driver comfort. So the cockpit temperatures were not high on his list of things that needed to be improved. And the first year in 2005, it was so hot outside, and it was just extreme inside the car. Every driver was suffering. And nowadays, if you get called nowadays at Le Mans, you're in the car for 2 hours. That's a given, pretty much. If you end up doing 4 hours, which is the max, you're okay. You can deal with that, no problem. But that first year in 2005, just trying to do 1 hour in the car was a real challenge. We were getting burnt feet, so I can remember having blisters on the bottom of my feet from the pedals. Between stints, we had the doctor with the team, and they were putting us on drips to sort of try and rehydrate us between the stints. And we were just about managing an hour in the heat of the day. It got better during the night, but it was a real challenge. So that first year was probably more of a challenge for the drivers than it was for the cars. 2006, we had a strong package, and to be honest, we probably had the chance to win, but with a few sort of issues. Technically, I think one of the cars suffered a few reliabilities, but ultimately on our car, I kept getting penalties, and still to this day don't understand what they were for. I think it was for hitting some cones. So I can remember.
You learn your lessons.
Well, I'm not sure. The problem is I don't know, because I was like, I don't know what cones you're thinking I've hit, but we kept getting these stop-go penalties, and eventually I get dragged up to see sort of the race director. And I can remember walking through the paddock with the boss of the whole thing at ProDrive, David Richards, and I like apologizing. I was like, I just don't know why I'm getting called out for all of these sort of penalties. But anyway, I got a very stern telling off from the race director. And when we were walking back, I was like to David, when this race is finished, if you don't want me to be part of the team, I fully understand. So I was probably at the lowest I've ever been with my own performance that weekend. But we bounced back in 2007 and had a titanic battle with the Corvettes as normal. The weather was, you can see at the beginning of the week when the photo was taken, it's a nice day. People in the short sleeves. Race day was a different matter altogether. It was pouring down with rain. It was pretty miserable. But David Brabham was in the car for the last 2 hours. Corvette were closing, but we had I think over a minute buffer at this point, and he stayed on track, and it was the first win for us at Le Mans in the GT1 class with the DBR9s. And I have to say, the podium is probably the most emotional place I've been. Looking down, the rain pouring down, loads of Union Jack flags, Aston Martin flags. You can see the crew down there as well, family, friends, lots of support for us as Aston Martin. It was a real joy to be part of that winning crew. And that car, if I won the lottery, it'd be the car that I'd buy. It'd be the first thing I'd purchase before anything else. Wouldn't be getting anything for the family first. It'd be straight out to the owner of that car to say, look, what can I offer to buy the DBR9 from 2007? Thankfully, I know the owner, and he's let me drive the car a couple of times, Goodwood last year and also Le Mans Classic as well. So it's nice. You can go 10, 12 years without driving it, and then jump back, and suddenly all the memories flood back, and exactly where all the controls are and all the little sort of secrets that the car has, and it's lovely. I absolutely love driving that car. It's my all-time favorite out of everything I've raced. That particular car, the DBR9 from 07, is the winner for me. Not just because it was our first win and my win at Le Mans, but it was the right package. Everything about that car is pretty special. So to be part of that team was a lovely experience. And then we went back the following year in 2008, and we repeated it. I don't think it was, I don't believe we sort of thought that was going to be part of the destiny, but it's we had Gulf oil sponsorship for the first time, so the cars changed from green to the sort of powder blue, and we went back, and similar race conditions really. It was pretty awful out there, and but we had a back-to-back wing, and that was the end of the work sort of GT1 program at Le Mans. 2009 there was customer cars, but that's when we moved on to LMP1 cars.
So you had the 2 wins at Le Mans, and then we're actually going to kind of fast forward quite a long time to the next time that you had success there, which was in 2017. And for me, I loved that moment. So by that point, I now knew you, and I knew what you were doing, and I was very kind of a big supporter. And a personal story, it was my brother's 40th that year. So he went to university in Le Mans. I bought him tickets for 24 hours. And he went, and I was talking to him over the weekend, and he left like half an hour before the race, even like 20 minutes before the race finished, because they had to get home to their kids. He was like, well, it's pretty much over. And I mean, for that, it ain't over till it's over. But that year, certainly, how incredible was that race and that win? Let's talk through it a bit.
I mean, I think the first win, 07, I mean, it's a great picture of Johnny coming across the line, but the first win in 07 was the one that was special to me, just to get a win at Le Mans. But what was special for this 2017 was I was sharing the car with a really good friend, with Johnny Adam, Daniel Serra from Brazil. Like he fitted in. He was just same as us, like super chilled, nice guy, but extremely fast on the racetrack. And the bit that was, I guess, a little bit of pressure was the V8 Vantage had never won at Le Mans. So we've been there, like, I think this was the 6th or 7th year with the car, and it was the last year with the car before it moved on to the current sort of Vantage that we've been racing for the sort of last 5 years or 6 years. And it would have been a real shame if we got to the end of 2017, the car had won championships, it won manufacturers championship, it won driver championships, it won pretty much every WEC race at some point, but not Le Mans. So there was this sort of internal pressure from everyone that we needed to get a win for this car before it sort of it retired. And the week started well. It was also really competitive that year, because I think there was like 15 or 16 sort of GTE pros, all works drivers, big manufacturer support from all the different manufacturers. So a lot of pressure, but great racing. That's what you go racing for, to have fights, and you want it to be competitive, and it was really competitive that year. So absolutely loved it. I got to do qualifying, because you don't know. You get to there, you do the practice session on the week before, and then the engineer and the team boss decide who's doing what. And I got the chance to do qualifying. So that's a real treat. Low fuel, new tyres, round Le Mans circuit is pretty special. And we put it on pole position. Doesn't mean much in a 24-hour race. It's nice to have. It doesn't, as long as you're sort of in the top 10, it's a good place to be. But it's, as a personal thing, just having the chance to go out there and push on low fuel in that situation is a really enjoyable experience, and to get that call was lovely. So I got to do qualifying. I think I started the race. I'm pretty sure I started the race, which is another sort of magical moment of Le Mans, that whole sort of build up and the excitement on the grid, and then the anticipation as you're sort of going around on the formation lap. And then it was, all hell broke loose, and we were in a scrap for the next 24 hours. And Daniel walked away with the fastest lap and a new lap record. But that last 40 minutes, me and Daniel were in the pits. Johnny's already in the car. It's slightly out of sync, so there's one more pit stop and 40 minutes to go. And Johnny knows that I think at the point, he thinks he's third, I think, at one point. But anyway, when he leaves the pit lane, our engineer, Everett, sort of gives him the heads up that the Corvette up ahead is for the lead. That is winning the race, and you're behind him. So he put in an incredible stint towards the end. And, he basically kept the pressure up to the point where the Corvette made mistakes and ultimately got the puncture from the flat spot at the second Mulsanne chicane. And, that moment when Johnny sort of overtook as he came out of the fourth chicane as they started the last lap, and Nicky was a lap or two down, but Nicky hounding the Corvette as well. Just the noise, even Johnny said that he could hear the crowd over the sound of the V8, and we could hear it, and the emotion in the garage as well, knowing that there's another 4 minutes. We still had to wait for Johnny to get to the line. It was an emotional win for all the right reasons. And it was super exciting and a lovely way for that car to sort of finish its career at Le Mans. So that's why it was so special.
I would recommend for anyone who's not seen it to go and watch on YouTube the last few minutes of that race, because every time I see it, I get really excited, even though I know what's going to happen, and I'm there like, cheering along.
I know at Johnny's house it's still played regularly, so yeah.
I mean, so it should be. And it's lovely as well to see it and see the two cars kind of working together as a team, even though there's one first position, only one of you's in the running for it. But it was really, I think it's just all over like a lovely moment, a great example of teamwork, the excitement in the pits, and then just honestly, I don't think there are enough words to describe that. I would recommend anyone after this call go onto YouTube and find that 2017 last few minutes. It was absolutely incredible.
It was certainly lovely for everyone who had an Aston Martin cap on, but for the Corvette guys, it was it was the opposite, absolute opposite. I can remember seeing them because you have like a waiting room for the podium, and I can remember being up there, and I think the Ford maybe came second, maybe in the end, because the Corvette dropped back. But I didn't know any of that, and my buddy Antonio Garcia was one of the Corvette drivers, and the disappointment. We're one end of the scale, jubilant, and they're just absolutely broken. And it's quite hard to see your friends in that situation, but get on the podium. We all had a lovely time, and it was a very good party after. So it was a good way to finish out Le Mans.
So we've only got another, maybe we can stretch it, but 5 minutes or so until we're going to turn over to questions, and we've still got a lot of career to talk about because that was only 2017. So
I'll be quick. I'll go quick. Yeah.
Let's skip ahead to our next picture, which was 2023. You've got here. Let's talk about this.
Yeah, we can rattle through this. So this just for me is like, I've been with Aston for 20 odd years, raced at Rolex Daytona 24 hour a number of times, but last year with Heart of Racing, Ian James there, the second from the left, he's the team owner, team boss, and everything else. We used to race Formula Renault together, like in the early 90s, and he's got me on the team. I'm super grateful for everything Heart of Racing, this period with Heart of Racing, because he gave me back my racing mojo. When you're racing for the works team, and as you get older, it's a conveyor belt. I got on the team younger, and I must have, without even knowing, pushed out an older driver. And ultimately, that time for me as a works driver sort of dropped away with the works team. But Ian gave me a chance with Heart of Racing, and it gave me the love again for being in a race car, purely for fun, purely for enjoyment. And the way they go racing as a team is fantastic. So to win the first time for Aston Martin, to win at Rolex in the Daytona 24 hour, to win it with Heart of Racing with Ian and sharing the car with Roman and Marco, but to win a bloody Rolex watch is pretty damn special, especially when you're not expecting to be in that situation at that point in your career. So it was a, you know, just a really nice moment, and super special to sort of walk away with the Rolex. So yeah, that was it. That was more like, here's a sort of end to the best bit of racing.
So aside from all the racing that you've done, you've also kind of transitioned more into the automotive side, and you've had a great hand in some of the massive developments that Aston Martin have made in the last few years in terms of what they've been designing, what they've been creating, the vehicles. Let's talk a bit about the Valkyrie project.
Yeah, so obviously 2015, I started doing a little bit of work for Aston Martin, with like the big house, we sort of say. Obviously, Aston Martin Lagonda is at Gaydon, one junction up the motorway from Aston Martin Racing. So it's, you know, it's 20 minutes from my home. And so David King, who was sort of head of special projects at the time, he got me involved with the Vulcan, which is you know, an amazing track day car. It's very much sort of in tune with a GT3 car, but more beautiful, more refined, just an incredible car. So I got a chance to be involved with that from basically day one with that project. So that was my first sort of foray of working directly with Aston Martin Lagonda. And then since then, you know, with various special projects along the line, I've had the chance to be involved with even some of the more sort of normal production cars, like the Vantage F1 Edition, the DBX 707. I've been part of the team, you know, small part, just to do some sort of high performance driving, just to help out. So, and I've learned a lot from all the engineers within Aston Martin Lagonda in terms of, it's a different world, you know, what they're trying to do and what they're trying to create. It's much more complicated than what we do in motor racing. Motor racing is really simple. It's like build a car, build a car to the regulations, make sure it lasts the length of the race, and it's fast. Pretty damn simple, reliable.
I mean, it sounds complicated to me, but sure.
But yeah, but in reality, the race cars have got a simple task, where road cars have got to fit so many sort of criteria, you know, legalities, legislation, emissions, you know, all of this, the safety. There's so much going on, and it made me realize how difficult it is to bring a car to market. So it's been really good for me to understand that. And then when the Red Bull and the Valkyrie sort of program started to sort of take shape, in the early days, it was like, wow, if I can get involved with that, that's going to be great. And I have to say, it's the most complicated car I've ever seen, more complicated than any race car. It's more like a NASA project. And even now, you know, you go into the sort of workshops at Gaydon, and you see the car, you see some of the cars in strip and that, and you just, it's incredible that they've been able to put that much technology in such a small package. And it was so much fun to be part of the program. Really frustrating at times, because obviously that most of the stuff on the car is unique to that car. It's pushing the boundaries of what a road car can be, and it really tested the engineers and the design departments to be able to get this car to the market. And you know, we had lots of test events where you'd go away for 3 weeks and you'd have a couple of days where you actually did nothing, because you know, the guys were pulling it apart and trying to work out a solution, how to fix it and how to get it to work how they expected it to work. And then you get the car back together, run it for 3 days, and then there'd be another technical challenge to sort. So, you know, I think it stretched everyone, but the finished product it's insane that's a road car. So it's been a real joy to be part of that project, and it's given me a better understanding of the automotive world. And you know, that's going to move on to the next project with Valhalla as well, and everything else that comes down the pipeline. And ultimately, you know, having had such a long career with Aston Martin Racing and that association with Aston Martin, it just means that it's a natural progression for me. You know, the days of me racing as a pro are numbered. You know, that's life. But the days I can help with car development with Aston Martin and use all that experience of 20 years with Aston as a race driver, but you know, over 30 years as a race driver, it just helps with a certain aspect of road car development. You know, it's not everything. No one wants a race car on the road all the time, but it just brings a different dimension to the development side. So yeah, I hope I can carry on with them for many years, because I certainly feel part of the brand, and you know, I've loved the journey with them so far.
I mean, I can't think of many people better positioned with the history that you have to be able to influence and inform these kind of cars. I mean, the fact that this car is a road legal car is insane. I showed it to a friend one time and he's like, yeah, that's cool. I was like, you can use it on the road. And he's like, oh my God, okay. And it's, you know, bringing those two worlds together. I can't imagine somebody that's in a better position to do that than you.
I have to say, it's like, you know, most of the stuff I did with the program is on a racetrack or development track, but towards the end, in the last year of its development, I started doing more and more of the road driving. And I can remember leaving Silverstone. It's a pouring down rain. We left the Aston Martin development track at Stowe, and it was my first run out on the road, public roads with the car. And it was raining, and I was a bit apprehensive about taking it out on the road. But within, I don't know, 3 kilometers, I was like, yeah, this is easy to drive. No drama. You know, even in those horrible wet conditions, it was, yeah, like no stress at all. So, yeah, they've done very well to make this car capable of what it can do on a racetrack, and then make it a user-friendly car on the road.
I mean, so taking this, which is kind of almost futuristic automotive design, our next picture is going way back. You've gone from one extreme to the other here.
Literally, I'll skim over this. I love this car, LM4. It's been a real joy to be part of the little racing journey that this car's had in recent years. So I met the owners at an event. They asked me along to test, and I was like, yeah, great, I'll come and have a go in the car, because it's different. I want to drive cars that are different from what I would be racing regularly. I didn't expect to race it. I just thought I'd go along and have a test day with them. It's got a central throttle at the time. Have the double declare. It's completely different from, you know, driving a Valkyrie in comparison. And then the owners asked if I'd go and do some racing with them. I never ever thought I'd be racing pre-war cars. I might have done like 7 or 8 cut races with the car now, and we did Le Mans Classic last year, and we won. I don't know how they do the scoring thing, but we didn't actually win on the road, but we won in our class, which meant we won our whole group of 80 odd cars, sort of thing. And it was magic to drive. Mulsanne Straight, first time doing the night without a roof, seeing the moon, having a real nice battle with another guy in a Bugatti. I don't even think we do 100 miles an hour on the straight in Mulsanne.
It probably feels faster though.
It does a little bit, and I kept ducking down, like using some of the old karting tricks, trying to like get myself down low in the car. But it's been a real joy to be part of this journey with the owners. Yeah, I love it, and you know, I'm going to be racing it again this year. But it just makes me appreciate the journey that Aston's been on as well. You know, going back and trying the cars from the early period of them as a manufacturer, and you know, being involved with the latest creation. It's great. You know, I think, you know, there's probably only one period of Aston's career that I haven't had the chance to drive yet, but hopefully at some point I'll get that chance. So, but it's been really good. But I just want to show the sort of the breadth of what cars are out there from Aston Martin, and the chance that, you know, I've had to drive pretty much most of them. So it's been really good.
Well, there's one more in between these two, which I know you're going to do a longer conversation about, so we will touch on this, but somewhere in the middle, there's another car that you've been working on recently.
It's a one-off, yeah. It's really, so I saw them talk about this, well, it's probably 4 or 5 years ago. I saw it and I was like, I don't really know anything about the car. And I started to sort of pay attention to it. And I thought that'd be amazing to get a chance to drive that at some point when it's back running, because you heard the story of being restored, and you know, they hope to be able to get back to, or get to the 200 mile an hour mark, which is what they always planned to be able to do the car back in 1980, I think. And then out of the blue, Richard Gauntlet, who was sort of the head of the, you know, program of this, contacted me and said, yeah, do you know about the Bulldog? And I was like, yeah, I've been like looking at what you've been putting out and the story and everything else. He goes, well, do you want to drive it and try and do the 200 mile? And I was like, yep, count me in. So, you know, with Richard asking me to do it, and Philip, the owner, it was great. You know, great to be involved. The company that did all the CMC that did all the restoration, they did an incredible job. And then last year we finally got a chance to try and get it up to the 200 mile an hour mark, and it was an airfield in Scotland. I arrived on the Monday evening, and I did a couple of up and downs just to sort of get my head back in the car and everything else. And then on the Tuesday morning, they had all the news crew, BBC were there. And I went up and down thinking, right, I'll just go and do a little bit of a warm up just to make sure that the car's all good and let's at least have a chance to see where the braking points were and everything else. Came back, opened the door, plugged in the computer and said, yep, 205. And it was like,
Oh,
right, okay, well, wasn't expecting that. That was all a bit easy. And so, yeah, literally the car did it with ease. And I remember talking to the original engineer and test driver back in the day, and he said they were running around Myra in the sort of high 180s and early 190s. And he said, yeah, it's really stable. It'd be easy able to do the 200 mile an hour with the work that the restoration's done. And it was. But it was lovely to be part of that. Be part of that story, to be part of the Bulldog, to be up there, and on the Tuesday night to get to celebrate with everyone that had been involved with the car. And the nice thing is the car's out there and it's being used and
cool.
going around the world, and everyone's getting a chance to see it. And it's a unique part of Aston's history.
Yeah, absolutely. I think they need to find a tougher car for you to get to 200 in. That does sound
That
too easy for
LM4
you.
trying to do 200 in that will be a challenge, that's for sure.
Amazing. Well, I think we're going to hand over to questions now so people can kind of ask what they want about your career. But thank you so much. I mean, like I say, we could have gone on for so much longer just on any of those points. It's been such an incredible career and it's so nice to hear. So thank you so much. I'm going to hand it over to, I think, Claire, and she's going to ask all of your questions.
I'm not sure, Christine, have we had any questions come through on the chat at all?
Well, I haven't had any yet, Claire. I don't know whether or not everybody's so kind of overawed with everything that they've been hearing.
Sorry, was I chatting too much?
No, absolutely not. No, I think Anne, you've asked a question. You're on mute at the moment. Do you want to just put it to Darren? So how did you find the VMF DB2 car at Goodwood?
Sorry, what car? I missed what you said.
Sorry, it's gone again.
So you raced the VMF DB2 at the Goodwood Revival.
Yes. So any chance I get to race an Aston at Goodwood is always a good day. So the DB2, that was quite a few years ago now. The bit where, so there's a funny story of that. So the owner got in touch and said, would you race the DB2? And I'm like, yeah, cool, that'd be great, brilliant stuff. And he goes, there's a test day down there. My mechanic Tony will meet you there. So I arrived at Goodwood for the test day, expecting to find some big race team, this car rolled out the back and everything else. And there was Tony with a Land Rover Disco and a farmer's trailer and this DB2 on the back of it, rolling it out. And I was like, oh my God, I know the history of this car and it's on the back of this farmer's trailer. And Tony was he was magical. I loved spending the test day with him, the race weekend with him. And it was just really nice to drive the car. I wasn't sure what we were going to achieve on the racetrack. And to be fair, Goodwood, I'm there to enjoy driving the cars. I'm not so worried about results, but somehow we put it on the front row, even with me going around with a handbrake on, which caused Tony a few problems that night because he had to go and source. I don't even know where he sourced it, but I think he drove many miles to go and find another person with a DB2, borrow their rear brakes, and then came back the next day and we won the race. We only won because the 356 that was on pole stall dropped to the back of the grid. I reckon if the race was another 3 laps, we wouldn't have been able to keep the 356 behind. But anyway, it was a good result for the DB2. But it was a lovely gentle car to drive. You know, it floated around. It didn't do anything. It didn't bite. It just loved the momentum going around the corners. And yeah, really nice. And just the interior and everything else. He just felt like a bit more of a cruise than a race car. But it was great car to drive. And I'm really happy because it was one of the few times I've won at Goodwood. So I'm glad the first time was in with an Aston Martin.
Thanks, Darren. We have another question here. When you were talking about how hot it was inside the cockpit of the DBR9, somebody has asked, Steve Brooks has asked, did the car get too hot? And if it did, how did you cool it down?
In terms of engine performance, yes, they were. I think as years went on, they developed better cooling in terms of not just the packaging and the cooling, but ways during the 24-hour race where they could clean the rads. That's the biggest issue is the rubber that goes in, and then suddenly the efficiency of the rad sort of deteriorates as the race goes on, and it's quite normal that you lose power during the race, especially like with the modern cars with the turbos, if you don't have anything that's cleaning out all the cooling. So I think year one we probably suffered quite a bit as the race went on engine cooling, but to be honest, it wasn't really about the car. It was just about the drivers. We were felt like we were dying at the wheel, and we were easily the weakest link. The car wasn't the weakest link; it was the drivers. So lots of lessons learnt from that weekend, and you know, I never want to experience that type of situation again. You know, nowadays we've got cockpit cooling. There's regulations that I think they got to keep it no more than 32 or 4 or 5 below whatever the ambient is. But I know we saw 70 degrees centigrade in the car at one stage during that race, which is like insane even for a sauna, let alone in a race suit, helmet, and trying to race a car sort of thing. So yeah, it was an awful experience, but yeah, definitely the DBR9 wasn't the weak link. It was the 6 drivers in the car that were dying at the time.
Well, at least you survived it, and you survived it well, Darren. And we have a question here from Russ Hopcroft, who says that he's lucky enough to have been to base performance and he loved it. And he was wondering if you still get to enjoy spending time in a sim. Have one at home, maybe?
Less so. I mean, I've got one.
Okay.
It's there. So yeah, I pretty much look at one every time I'm in the office at home. The thing, well, there's 2 sides to it. So sims have been very good for me. When I was at McLaren in '98, they started pretty much the first driver in the loop in Formula One simulators. I happened to be their sort of young test driver. Martin Whitmarsh said, "Do you want to do it?" I would have done anything for the team and any sort of driving. So, you know, I gained all that experience with McLaren, eventually went to Red Bull F1, then to Toyota F1 before they went out of Formula One at the end of 2009, then across to Toyota in NASCAR with their simulators. So I did all this high-end multi-million-pound simulators for many years, gained all that experience. So when I set up Base Performance in 2009, I sort of knew the top end of the market, but didn't know about the other end of the market. And you know, the business is still running. I'm still involved. I sold it out pretty much the majority of it at the beginning of last year, but I'm still a shareholder of the company. I was there for a day last week. I still have my sim here, so I'm still involved. But because I think I burnt myself out with all the years of doing it professionally, and you know that they're quite intense days. So I don't. It's not like I come home and desperately want to get back on the sim sort of thing. So we have some fun nights. We do some racing on Tuesday nights. It's a load of guys just pounding around, beer in hand, doing a bit of racing, some random cars just for fun. So those nights are fun. But yeah, in reality, I don't really use a sim anymore for training unless it's a new circuit where I've never been to. But you know, at this age, I've been to pretty much most circuits now. So yeah. But I go to Base Performance and sort of check in and see how it's all going.
Great. Sounds like Tuesday nights are good in your house then.
If I get a chance to come out here, which isn't very often. So yeah, if I can sneak out. So.
Yusuf has joined us. He's calling from Portugal, I think. So, and he wants to know if you've been involved at all with the AMR F1.
So hey Yusuf, we met in I think a couple of years ago with the Valkyrie. No, not really. So I've done a couple of the F1 weekends, but to do hot laps for Aston Martin and Pirelli. And that's pretty much my only interaction with the F1 team. That said, there's a big day tomorrow for everyone at Aston Martin from Silverstone. So I'll be up close, hopefully, to some of the F1 cars tomorrow. So yeah, I mean, it's a weird old world when you think Jordan Grand Prix is Aston Martin F1. You know, as the base, the company. You look back at the history of what Aston was, Racing Point before that, Midlands, and everything that came before it. It all goes back to Jordan Grand Prix. So I just find it like quite nice that, you know, the Aston Martin F1 team is based on the basically they've knocked down the building that was Jordan Grand Prix, but you know the footprint was where the team used to be, and I used to run my little Formula First out of there. And to save money, I used to sleep under my little workbench at work. So I didn't have to pay any rent, so I could buy some tires for my car. So, you know, that those premises meant a lot to me because I lived there pretty much, ran my cars, learned so much, met loads of people, and I have whatever the team was, even before it came Aston Martin, it was always my favorite just because of the history I had with it. So it's really nice that it's like a big circle and it's gone back round.
I hope you're writing these things down, Darren. So
No.
that when so that your memoirs are documented. We
Oh,
need
right.
to written somewhere. I've got another question for you though. You've won at Le Mans in V8 and V12s. Do you have a preference for which one?
Yeah, easy. And I'm not dismissing the V8 Vantage because it was a special car. I did a lot more racing in that car than I did with the DBR9. But ultimately, the DBR9 will always be my favorite. It's the car that I love, the V12, just the aero that we had with that car. I've got pictures of my kids up and one picture of one car up in the office. So, it's the car that I love. And I don't know if you're a V8 fan or a V12 fan, but I'm on this occasion I'm going to stick with the V12.
Well, it's funny actually because it's you probably are aware that the Aston Martin Owners Club attends Simply Aston every year, and on the 7th of April we're going to be having a display of DBR9s.
Oh, wow.
So if you can come along. We might get you a free cup of coffee whilst you're there.
Nice. Okay, I like free stuff.
There you go. Come along and see if you can maybe chat to a few people about how it was to race them.
Okay.
It would be great to have you there, actually. Really
Okay, yeah, just drop me the note with the date and I'll see what's available.
brilliant. Okay. Give you another question. Is that okay for another question or two?
Yeah. Yeah.
Goodwood Revival. Do you have plans to drive there again at all?
Yep. I don't know what. So what's happened is over the years you've become like a regular of Goodwood, and Goodwood themselves place you as a driver with an owner who's got a car that is going to be an entry. So members meeting is coming up first in April. So I know I've got 2 cars to race there already. I won't know until probably later in the year about the revival, but I will be there. It's a favorite for us as a family. So my kids do the little Setterington Cup pedal car race. My daughter's too big now, but she did it last year and she's done it for about 4 or 5 years before. My wife loves it because she gets to dress up every day. The ball's amazing, and we as a family have an amazing time. So yeah, pretty much soon as Goodwood put the date out for that weekend, it goes in the calendar, and I'm told not to try and get any races that might clash with it. It's not always the case, but I try my hardest to keep the revival weekend free so we can be there.
Okay, right. Let's well, this is a message really, Darren. This isn't a question, it's a message for you. Okay, so this is from Russ Hotcraft, who says he wants to wish you a happy forthcoming big birthday.
It's not far away. Yeah, I got 50 in a couple of months. So yeah, I'm really happy getting to 50. And honestly, I never thought that was going to happen. So to get there and still be doing what I love,
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
buzzing for it. Lots of people I sort of speak to, and they're like, "Oh no, I'm getting close to. Oh, I'm going to be 50 next birthday." I'm like, "Yeah, great. I can't wait." So
Yeah.
I'm going to enjoy it. In fact, it's the same weekend as the members meeting, so I'll be doing exactly what I love: racing cars on my birthday. And yeah, I can't think of a better way to celebrate being 50.
Absolutely. Go for the bang. That's a fabulous idea.
Hopefully not. Yeah, not with a bang. Hopefully, I'll be
Champagne corks.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Champagne, yeah, but not other bangs. Yeah.
Darren, thanks for your time today. You've
Absolute
been a
pleasure.
real star, and you've given us such an insight into the world of racing and how you can do it. Starting with just sheer hard work, and so that's been a real privilege chatting with you. Couple of things that you've mentioned. Well, obviously you chatted about Bulldog. That leads us on to another session that we're going to be having to discuss the Bulldog restoration, and so that's going to be coming up within the next month or so. These videos they're all going to be uploaded onto the YouTube channel, so don't forget to watch. Now that I've learned how to do it properly, I'll do it really quickly, and you won't have to wait for too long. And I think that's probably it, really. Just thanks to everybody for coming. It would be great if we could see you at Simply Aston, and watch out.
Send the dates and I'll try and be there.
Okay, that would be fantastic. Great.
So thank you very much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks, Claire.
Fran, thank you for looking after me and walking me through this. Claire, thanks for putting all the photos together. And to Aston Martin Owners Club, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Enjoy Sunday.
Bye. Bye. Bye.
Bye.